Welcome to everyone who is here tonight with us and to all my panelists who I will introduce right now. My name is Mia Orobona. I am the Assistant Head of Teen Services at Darien Library, and I'm very excited to be tonight's MC. Um, First, we have the author of The Stepping Off Place, which is Cameron Kelly Rosenblum, who is here to talk about her book and how fiction can help smash the stigma around discussions of mental health. Also joining us this evening are Janice Marzano and her amazing teens from the Depot, Colby, Julianne, Juliette, and Victoria, who are going to interview Cameron about the book. And last but not least, we have Emma Kate Freatman, who is a licensed professional counselor from Silver Hill Hospital, who is on hand to answer any questions that we may have about the mental health aspects of the book and really anything else. Before we get started, if anyone in the audience has questions, please ask them in the Q&A box or in the chat, and we will do our best to get to them after our interview section with our Depot teens. All right, with all that out of the way, I'm going to cede the spotlight to Cameron to get us started. Cameron, will you start us off with your quick backstory to how and why you wrote this book and a little synopsis about it, just in case some of our attendees haven't yet read the book?
Hi, first I want to thank everyone for coming tonight, and I'm so it's such a circle of life thing for me to be doing this with Darien High School kids. The book is about high schoolers, and I went to Darien High School, and as you will see if you haven't read the book, that I draw pretty heavily on my high school experience. So it's very special for me to be here. And I'm so impressed by Janice and the kids from the Depot and Mia for pulling all this together. I think it's really wonderful. So thank you, everybody. So yes, this is my book, The Stepping Off Place. So I'm going back and forth whether to talk about what it is about first or the why I wrote it. So I think I'll just give you a little synopsis first, actually. So this is a story of a very strong female friendship between two characters. Reed is the narrator, and her best friend is Hattie. And Hattie is sort of the superhero figure, and Reed is very happy to be the sidekick. She likes that role. That is not upsetting to her. She feels like she kind of rides Hattie's coattails all through high school, and especially right before they're about to start their senior year. They've started getting invited to all these parties because Hattie is just naturally cool. And so Reed is finding herself in all these social situations that she may or may not feel prepared to handle. And then what happens right at the beginning, so it's not a spoiler, in chapter 1, we kind of find out right away, boom, that Hattie has in fact died, and that it has been ruled a suicide, although Reed won't have that. She does not believe it. But and so the story becomes one of a girl who thinks of herself as the sidekick and likes to be kind of in the background, to kind of finding her way into stepping into herself. That's kind of where the title comes from. And at the same time, also a story of grief. And I try to explore all the mental health topics really, really honestly and very carefully, because it's such an important topic. So that's kind of the synopsis, I guess. It goes back and forth in time. So you're able to see all the friendship, which helps you understand why it's so devastating to Reed. But then also, you know, it's mixed up with Reed kind of finding her way, trying to understand what really happened. And So that's the book. So now I will tell you why I wrote the book. If you know me at all, you would not think that I was going to be the kind of person to write this book. I'm a pretty lighthearted person. I'm pretty, I don't know. I never thought I would be writing this book, but the reason I wrote this book is because I had a dear friend from Darien when we were in middle school, absolutely tight, thick as thieves. And she actually moved away before high school. They moved out west, the family, but we remained friends all our lives, went to each other's weddings. And then I learned that as an adult, she took her life because we were at that time, living across the country from each other. We only talked maybe once or twice a year. We always sent Christmas cards that were silly and jokey and just like no time had gone between. And so when I found out that she had passed in this way, I was floored and also devastated, because the hardest part for me was that I had no idea that she struggled with mental illness and had been struggling with mental illness since probably her mid to late teens. And so I was kind of faced with two things to deal with. One was, and I should also add, so I live in Maine now, and none of my friends in Maine knew her. And my husband didn't even really know her. And so I was kind of like on my own to process this. And because of that, I wanted to write a book that would celebrate our friendship, because I was kind of making my own memorial service, really, through the book. It was kind of like a cathartic art therapy type of situation for me. And so I wanted to celebrate, but I also wanted to really dig into how awful and sad it is when someone is left in the wake of a suicide, because it's an incredibly difficult burden for people who are left behind. And of course, we miss the person who is gone, and that's part of what the book is about. But that person is in a different place now, and we're still sitting here, and we need to make sense of this. So I'm going to stop talking, because that's it's hard for me to put it into tiny words, but yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Well, we're going to get into more, because these lovely people from the depot are going to ask you a lot of questions.
Yes, they are.
So I'm going to hand it right off to them. Juliette, I believe you are starting.
My first question is based on the setting of the book, which is a town called Schofield, which is based heavily off of Darien. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about the parts of the culture of Darien that you tried to recreate in the book when describing Schofield, and also how this aspect of the culture of Darien kind of played into developing the plot of the book.
So this is an amazing question. So I think the reason that because my memories are all from being in Darien with this particular friend, it felt really natural for it to be set in Darien. You'll hear writing teachers say things like, write what you know. And I was really making up a lot of this story because, as I said, it's set in high school, but we didn't go to high school together. So I really had to make that up. And that was a lot of fictionalizing and a lot of imagination. There's the essence of the friendship. There's the essence of probably my character and her character in Reed and Hattie. But I loved being able to kind of cheat and use Darien because I didn't have to make that up. I was like, okay, I could just roll with this. So the very opening scene is like cruising right down the post road. And it was so funny because my editors were like, we noticed that you put the word the before post road. Is that a typo? But we couldn't understand because you did it through the whole book. I'm like, it's called the post road. That's what you call it. And so they were like, okay. But I did want to fictionalize it because I didn't want to, I haven't lived in Darien for a long time. My folks are still there. So I do get around once in a while. But, I don't totally know the culture now, but I'm very familiar with the social scene. I would be surprised if it has changed a terrible amount. So it felt pretty natural for that. I also think that there was a stoicism to the to Hattie's family when it came to the loss. Like they pretty much shut down. And while I have nothing but compassion for people in that situation, and it's not judgmental, but I kind of wanted to contrast that with what the kids were needing. The kids were needing to talk about it on their terms. And it wasn't even clear until halfway through the book that it was actually a real suicide. They try to kind of go underground. And I don't know if that's still true. I think that's a little bit of a more traditional, sort of like old fashioned way of handling something like that. Again, I have nothing but compassion and it's not judgmental, but I kind of feel like that lends itself to a place like Darien. And so that felt really natural to me.
So I think reading the book, you kind of create your own idea of what it means, but I wanted to ask you, what message do you want this book to send to readers?
Well, most of all, I was very, very conscious of writing for your age group. Speaking as a mom, there is nothing more terrifying than the idea of suicide. It's terrifying, absolutely terrifying. And I feel like I wanted kids to see that not talking about it is a really big problem. And that's what, we call the mental health stigma is, people don't like to talk about this topic very much. It gets brushed under the rug. And so I wanted to show a story where how devastating that can be and how it's not necessary and how much you can do to start conversations. So I think my biggest message is talk about it. I wish so much that my friend had talked to me about her struggles, but I would have risen to the occasion. I'll never know why she chose not to, but I just want to tell as many people as I possibly can on planet Earth that, your friends are there and they're listening, and you've got teachers and family and all kinds of people out there. So that's really my message, is to not hide if you're struggling.
First question is, why did you choose to have the character who passed away to suicide as someone who's described as loving life the most out of everyone in the book?
So this is a really interesting question. And so in the story, and I do not know that this is true of my friend, I, again, had to kind of make up a lot, but she has a condition called bipolar 2 disorder. And bipolar 2, and I'm really going to ask Emma Kate to hop on here in a minute, but this was my experience with a relative that I know who has this. When someone is bipolar, they have really high highs, but they can be counterbalanced by really low lows. So they can be on top of the world, and then they can switch over because they go through these cycles. And so I wanted to kind of create that in Hattie, that she was someone who could, she was so capable, and so she just had, like, to read especially, she just had absolutely everything going on. But then there was this other side to her that she chose to secret away. Um, and so I would love Emma Kate to comment, because I'm not a professional mental health worker in any way, but that is my understanding of that disorder.
Right. And I think, just to piggyback on something you had said earlier about stigma, I think you did such a beautiful job of outlining this character as someone who it may not have been very obvious to the people around her. And it sounds like she did a really good job of making sure it wouldn't be obvious to the people around her that there were times that she didn't love life, or that she felt really, really low. And stigma had a lot to do with that. But you're describing it very well. Bipolar disorder, bipolar 1 and bipolar 2, it tends to be marked by these really high highs and really low lows. And when we're talking about bipolar 2, we're talking about a hypomanic episode being present at some point. And that's what the high really looks like, right? And it's often not pleasant for people when they're experiencing it. Sometimes they can feel on top of the world, or feel like they have a lot of energy. And then sometimes, the title, The Stepping Off Place, actually made me think about bipolar disorder a little bit, where there can be sort of that stepping off point of, this is now scary, or this now doesn't feel good, or now the people around me are worried about me. So having those really high highs, and then the lows, which again, you captured really well with her, not being able to get out of bed, not being able to make it to the boat with her dad, no matter how hard she wants to, or would like to, or knows that she should want to. It's debilitating.
Yeah.
So yeah, but no, you described it very well.
Oh, thank you.
What did you learn about mental health when writing your book?
Well, so I researched a lot, right? Because I really wanted to be very respectful of people who do have mental illnesses, such as depression and anxiety and bipolar 2 and bipolar. And so I researched a lot. And what I learned was, I would say I was surprised by the statistics of how many people actually have depression and anxiety. Like, it's so common. And I think we do a disservice in a lot of ways, especially to young people, when we pretend that it's not there. So the best statistic I learned was the success rate of treatment. And that could be a medication treatment, but it could also be all kinds of different therapies. But once someone decides to reach out and get help, the success rate is like staggering. And Emma Kate, again, you probably know the actual number, but I feel like it was over 85% or 90% or something.
Well, I'm glad that you touched on that, because again, it made me think of something else from the book. Anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, lots of these mental health issues are incredibly treatable, right? And with bipolar, we're talking about these highs and lows, and we see how those highs and lows can become more manageable, or become less frequent, or that cycle becomes a little bit more predictable, a little more even keel when people seek treatment, right? And when they have a good connection with a therapist, when they have a great med regimen, right? When we have that best practice of counseling and medication support, if that's what's appropriate for your diagnosis. And we see in the book how difficult it is to manage when treatment isn't happening, or when treatment compliance isn't happening. So, talking with your providers, talking with your friends, talking with your family about what sort of help you need, what sort of support you need, and what sort of accountability would be helpful. Can be really helpful, especially in reducing stigma.
Yes.
So my next question is talking about just the healing process that you kind of went through following your learning of your friend's passing, and how this book kind of helped you overcome some of the big emotions that you were feeling. And also, I was just wondering how you would suggest that other people in a similar situation to you might go about starting the healing process in kind of a healthy and manageable way?
I love these questions. Yes, I had to kind of work my way through the loss of my friend. And honestly, I was, probably 40 at the time. And I couldn't believe how hard it was for me. I mean, of course, it's a terrible, sad thing, but I'm talking about a friend that I hadn't seen in person in probably 12 years. Um, and even though we did keep up, we did definitely kept up, but it was not, I realized at last, that I think that at your age, when I was bonding with my friend, it's like the same time when you're becoming your personality, your like blueprint of your adult life is starting right now. And I think because of that, if you have a really, really close friendship, it's almost like you're part of each other. I mean, we were one of those things where it was like, we had sleepover streaks, and we would every weekend for like 3 solid years, we had sleepovers. And, I think that, I think that's why it was like part of me died with her. It was this whole sense of innocence, and I always sort of idolized her and looked up to her. And I thought, my gosh, this girl has it all. And then when I got this news, I was just devastated, and I couldn't, I had to do something. So I am a huge believer in art therapy. My graduate degree is in creative arts and learning. I have a master's in education, and I went to Lesley University in Cambridge, Mass for that. And I did a specialized program, which was more than just the standard teaching. It also had a semester of using the creative arts to help learning. And one of my best classes was called Arts and Society. And we did this whole thing about why there are public monuments, like why is there the Vietnam Wall? Why is there various kinds of monuments? And really, I think a monument is to remember. And I think it gives you a very concrete way to like put a timestamp on something that's happened and then move on. And then it's this thing that you created, and you can like look back on it and be like, oh, I did that. And I'm wearing, I don't know if you can see it, but this is a necklace that my friend, who's a really cool jeweler, made for me. It's a cairn. And a cairn is like the simplest kind of monument you can ever make. It's like piling a bunch of rocks on each other. But I put the cairn, spoiler alert, I put the cairn at the end of the story because the kids needed to do something. They were not satisfied by the traditional church thing. It didn't ring true to them. It wasn't authentic to their life. So they needed to do something for them. Hello, that was also me doing something for me, kind of like hiding behind this. So I am so grateful I took that class, because I really thought to myself, I am going to make something. And so now when I look on the shelf and I see this book, I'm like, wow, that's kind of cool. I actually published a book. But then I'm also like, I see my friend. So it's like my monument to our friendship. And I think monuments are and any kind of creative way you make a monument, it certainly doesn't need to be written or even out of rocks. But Emma Kate, I would love your help on that one too.
No, you and I have something in common. We both really like expressive therapies. Yeah, art therapy is wonderful. Being able to put something on paper or make something or create a monument, like you said, that helps express maybe what's really hard to verbalize or show what's hard to describe or explain, can be really, really helpful. So for those of you who maybe have tried talk therapy before and haven't found it particularly helpful, it might be something good to check out. Anytime there's a loss, one of the first things I try to do is encourage people to stay away from that tendency to isolate, because grief can be a really isolating process, and it is a process. Like, I think, again, Cameron, you capture it really well in the book, what grief can look like and not look like for a lot of people. So the more that you're able to surround yourself with people who get it, who will support you, who will be there for you, whether you need to talk or just sit, the better. And I think that ideally, right, would look like a good mix of family, friends, social supports, and also professional support, so that, excuse me, if you're finding that you need a little bit more than friends or family can offer, if you want to be able to create boundaries around what I talk with my friends and family about and what I feel like I really need to talk to somebody else about, that can be really helpful. And there's so many wonderful resources in our area. You know, in Darien, you guys have the Center for Hope. Kids in Crisis also offers wonderful resources to schools and local families. There's wonderful therapeutic resources available. So if, when in doubt, or if you're wondering what resources are available to you, if you have kids in school, reach out to your school professionals, reach out to Human Services, reach out to the library. We all, call Kids in Crisis. They have a 24-hour helpline in which they can tell you which resources are available to you and most local to you. But you're not alone in having to grieve. And there actually are lots of resources specific to survivors of suicide. So again, people who really intimately get it. So I would encourage anybody who's dealing with any sort of loss, try to surround yourself with people as best you can.
Yeah, there's a great program called the Yellow Tulip Project that's up here in Maine. And I love it because it's youth driven, and the kids, many of whom have experienced that kind of loss, they kind of pool their energy and buoy each other. And they have Wellness Wednesday, and they have on Instagram, they have Wellness Wednesday, they have Monday. Every day is a different theme, and they have all kinds of visiting people who come on. I think in the book, Reed thinks that because Hattie is her friend and nobody else knows her like her, she gets a little like stuck in like, only I need to mourn her, nobody else really does. And that's in the way. And when she finally lets that go, that's when she's really able to move forward. So
I think right now a lot of people are struggling with their mental health and just kind of the uncertainty in the world right now. So my next question for you is, what piece of advice would you give to someone struggling with their mental health?
reach out. It's that simple. There are so many resources, but reach out. Don't try to go it alone, because first of all, I truly believe people are much more understanding and forgiving than you think. It might feel hard to start the conversations at first, but seriously, right now, a lot has been kind of laid at your feet as teenagers, and it's hard for anyone. I think what's also hard is that it's also hard for adults. So all of us are kind of trying to plow through, and it's really, really challenging. So I think you should not beat yourself up if that is the feel, if you have some days where you're like, God. Again, Emma Kate, that's just my life experience comment, but I'm not a professional.
No, but I think it's very informed and accurate, right? If you're struggling, if you think you're struggling, if you wonder if you're struggling, reach out to somebody. This is a really strange, uncomfortable, anxiety provoking time for a lot of people, and you're certainly not alone. Even if your experience is different than your neighbors or the person next to you, we still have something in common right now, and that we're all sort of having to manage this and go through this together, and figuring out what that together might look like for you, or what feels most supportive, I think is important. And yet reaching out would be my step one as well. And for those who maybe find that they struggle with practicing that self-care, right? Or with allowing themselves to deserve to ask for help or to do something nice for themselves. What I'll often say is, that pot that we put on the back burner, if we leave it there long enough, it does boil over. So what a great position to be in right now. If you notice like, oh, I am struggling a little bit. My sleep isn't great. My appetite isn't great. I'm being a little snippy lately. I'm ghosting my friends a little bit. Understanding yourself, what's normal for you, what isn't, what feels good for you, what doesn't, and then having the wherewithal or the ability to do something about it and get some help, reach out to somebody, let somebody know that you're struggling. Like what great of an opportunity to prevent something from getting worse, right? Or being in a situation where it might be more difficult for people to help. So I echo what you're saying, Cameron. If you feel you're struggling, if you think you're struggling, reach out. And if anyone needs any ideas of what reaching out might look like or who to reach out to, I can stick around, or you can ask me questions in the chat.
My next question is more so on the book itself. And I was wondering why you have Reed and Hattie's friendship associated with O'Keefe clouds and then Hattie's death associated with the stars.
So that was such an interesting question. I love that. So the clouds was very conscious, and the sky, because there's a hugeness to the sky that I think, as humans, honestly, this sounds a little hokey, but I really believe that's why we love going camping and like just lying down and being able to see all the stars, is like, it reminds you of the greatness of the universe, sort of. And I wanted Hattie because that really resonates with Hattie, because especially when she's in her sort of stable or manic phases, she really searches out things that are bigger than her, because she's just that's what feeds her, is just these larger than life experiences. And so, but the clouds, honestly, the reason I picked the O'Keefe clouds is because Georgia O'Keefe is sort of the classic American badass woman, and she was one of the first ones. And I saw that particular painting, which is actually lesser known of her work, at the Chicago Institute, and it is massive. It's like 60 feet wide and like 20 feet tall. It's huge. So you literally you come upon it in this space in the gallery, and you kind of feel like you're above the clouds. And she, I've heard her quoted or read about her talking about that painting and how it was about her first experience flying in an airplane. And, this was a pretty new technology at the time, commercial air flight. And she just couldn't get over that they were above the clouds and they were looking down on the clouds. And so I felt like, there's a little bit of a connection there that's personal with my friend around that. So maybe that was a little bit of me, more of my personal side of it. But I love the imagery of it. And I love the cloud being like a symbol of something hidden. And like the fog banks and all the fog up in Maine is kind of, it's distorting things. And as for the stars, I actually did not realize I did that. So you pointed something new out to me, and now I have to think about it. But yeah, I think the stars is the universe and just the greatness of it. And the hugeness of nature, that was all very much in Hattie's wheelhouse of.
So my last question is just about the character development. And so we've discussed that Hattie's based off of your childhood friend, but when you were developing the other characters, were there specific people that you were basing them off of? Or were they a bit of an accumulation of traits from your imagination and other people just throughout your life?
Yeah. I would say the latter. Of course, when you're writing fiction, you really want to fictionalize. I don't want someone to be like, oh, well, that's exactly this person from, because that's cheating also as an author. Like I want to create my own characters. That said, you pull from what you know. So I would take a character, someone from my memory. It's sort of like it's been a while since I was in high school, so it's not like I have crystalline memories of everybody, but I have a good enough memory that I could kind of pull the aura, like, the character who's kind of a jerk and has questionable morals when it comes to girls. Sadly, that's kind of a conglomeration of probably 20 different people I've known over the years, but I could use that and then put a face to it. A lot of times I honestly, I Google images until I just like stumble upon a face of somebody that just looks like the right character. I mean, that's really not very, high art, but it works for me. And then I just create this person. And, every draft, it goes deeper and deeper. So you get to know the people. If you saw the first draft, some of the characters don't even have the same names, and, they're all different, but every time you do it again, you get to know them better and what you also need them to do in the story.
So my last question for you is based off of kind of like the hidden messages you see throughout of like kind of the struggle that Hattie was dealing with, and even Reed figuring out like kind of hidden messages. So my last question is, was it difficult to write a book involving someone struggling with mental health?
Well, we worked on that. When I say we, my editor and I worked on that, planting in my first drafts. There were no hints because I kind of wanted it to mirror my experience where I just got completely blindsided. But that doesn't make really good fiction. So we decided to go ahead and plant some signs. But I think they were subtle enough that Reed could miss them because she didn't know to be looking for anything. And I think that's the piece that's what makes stigma so dangerous, is if the person who is struggling doesn't let anybody else know. I mean, who would have thought of that? You just assume everything's fine. I think that's kind of our default. And so yes, it was difficult, but I was very motivated by doing justice to this topic. So that's what drove me to keep trying to make it believable and authentic.
My last question is, when Reed is seeing Hattie's ghost and hearing Hattie, or when Reed is seeing Hattie after Hattie has died, is it Hattie's ghost or a figment of Reed's imagination as she's coping with the death?
Oh, that's such a good question. So I don't want to answer it. I don't even answer it to myself, to be honest, really, because I feel like it's somewhere. I'm not sure what happens to people. I don't think anybody can say with absolute certainty what happens to people. And I think for Reed, it's just impossible to wrap her mind around the fact that someone who is so big in her world could just be gone. And so it's believable either way to me. And it's also a little homage to my friend, because she was the kind of girl who loved ghost stories, and she would always make me watch those zombie movies and everything terrifying. So that felt really like kind of a fun thing to put in, to have her there. It also served the plot because she kind of gooses her along throughout. So I guess I'm just going to be evasive on that one. You decide.
So my next question is more general towards you. So what does the topic of mental health mean to you?
So I think what I have learned most of all is that everyone needs to work on wellness, mental wellness. I don't think that any of us, I think that you know, I grew up on like these shows like the Brady Bunch and the Partridge Family, and I know I'm super aging myself, but this was just like everything was like, oh, you know, unless there's a problem, there's not a problem. But I don't think that's really reality. I think everybody has ups and downs. You don't necessarily have to have a diagnosable mental illness to feel sad and to feel devastatingly sad. You can have a blue period. That doesn't have to mean you have a permanent lifelong condition. There's circumstantial things. And so I think what it's taught me is to pay attention and to be compassionate to other people. And I try really hard to listen to people, you know, and not want to make it okay. Oh, it's okay. You're going to be fine. It's all fine. I think it took me a while to learn that. So I think mental illness, mental wellness, mental health is all about paying attention to yourself, myself, and also pay attention to the people around you. It's a life skill. Mental wellness is a life skill for sure.
And then my last question is, why should people read your book?
I love that question. Well, I hope they will read it because they enjoy it. We've really been focused very, very much on the sad elements of the book. There are also happier elements of the book. So I hope that people will read it because it's a good story. But I also, of course, like I've pretty much said all night, is I'm just very committed to helping kids get conversations started. So I really think that fiction is a great way, books are a great way to enter into conversations that might be otherwise swept under the rug. And so if you read a story and you can get into really good conversations about the characters like you guys just did, now all of a sudden, you know, you've probably raised your awareness just by engaging in this very thing that we've just done. So that's what I'm hoping that people take away from the book. And I love that direct question. That's like a CNN question, just like right to me.
Your elevator pitch. Why? Well, we have some other great questions coming in from the audience. First, I want to thank everyone who they thought of all these questions on their own. Amazing, amazing teenagers
really
and
great
thinkers and readers. I'm blown away. We were all blown away. So thank you, ladies, so much for those. And thank you, Emma Kate, also for your help answering them. But here's a few more from the Q&A box. So I'm just gonna figure out how this works on the fly. One question here is, what made you write this book for young adults instead of a novel for adults?
That's a great question because it was a very conscious choice for me. When I was first starting to process this, I always knew I was going to write it. Once I decided to write a book, that was going to be my monument to my friend. And I started thinking it would be a great adult story. But then I realized, you know what, my friendship with her was not when we were adults. So it didn't feel like the right story. And then, you know, the teacher in me also, I've been working with young people my whole career. So I guess I decided it was a more important story for younger people. So that's
a great answer.
That's why I chose to do that.
Great answer. Here's another good one. How has your outlook on life changed for the better after writing your book?
Well, like I said, I feel like, first of all, I had been trying to get published before this, and I feel like I got, I'm just so grateful that I actually have a book that I've learned that, you know, when you stick to something, it really can happen, which is like the oldest cliche ever, but it really is true. I think the reason it got published is because I never gave up on trying to get it published. And so I was willing to listen and take advice. And of course, you know, then there's all those way bigger life lessons about friendship, checking in on people. I like to check in on friends. If I don't hear from them for a while, I check in.
That's excellent advice. Here is hard-hitting questions coming in. Would adults enjoy reading this book as well, or do you think it's just for young adults? I personally can answer that myself. I loved the book and I'm an adult, so.
I have my Darien friends actually have been huge cheerleaders for the books, and I'm talking the ones from the class of 1984. So I do think it has a lot of crossover. A lot of YA is written by people who are younger than me, let's just be honest. And I think you can't erase yourself from your book. Like, I can write the dialogue that's teenagers, but I'm still a person who's had more years of experience. And so I think that it kind of leaks in there, even though actually I was trying not to do that. I think it is. I get a lot of nice letters from adults. So.
Have you had contact with your friends' family, and how did they feel about you writing the book? And actually, the next question.
I don't want to go too much into that, just because it's private to them, and but I will say that her husband was incredibly generous with me in sharing information, and I know it's just a very difficult situation, and her parents, of course, are much older now, and they're very private people. So I'd rather not really go into that so much.
Totally fair. How about this? What advice would you give to high school students who want to pursue writing their own fiction?
Oh, love it. I was hoping someone was going to want to write out there. I got inspired by the teachers at Darien High School, and I went to homeschool, and even my 4th grade teacher was the one who really got me fired up, Mr. Tempanelli. I think he went on to be a principal of Hinley or something. But right, don't give up on it. It's so great. When I went to college at Kenyon in Ohio, I went because it had an awesome, amazing English department. And I don't regret that a bit, but they have evolved their English department to include a lot of creative writing, whereas I had one creative writing class in college. But if you are a person who loves to process, fiction writing is a blast. So you should just don't let go of that and just keep writing.
Just keep writing. This leads right into my next question. Do you have any more books for young adults coming out that you can share some information with us? Or is it a secret?
For me?
Yeah.
Oh, for me? Yes. I do. I have another book coming out. I just got I'm on the 3rd draft with my editor right now. It's called Sweeping Glass. It is actually about consent at a private elite boarding school. And it features, again, kind of a big cast of characters, but it's about, I wanted to write a book. I mean, I love, there's some really great fiction out there about consent and sexual assault that are for young people, but I wanted to write something that was post Me Too, so that the characters are Me Too aware, as opposed to the ones that are a little bit older. So that's called Sweeping Glass, which is a rowing reference because there's a crew team involved. And that is coming out in 2022.
Maybe we can have you back in person that time. Fingers crossed. And then the last question, I think before we all head off, is do you have any other books that you would recommend for teens about mental health? Or
yes, I do. I wanted to show, I have some brand new ones, but I pulled this one off my shelf because this is one of my favorites, and it's from 2011. It's called Jersey Tomatoes Are the Best. But I love this book. It's by Maria Padian, who lives in Maine, because it takes 2 girls who are really driven type A. One is on the track to becoming a pro tennis player, and the other is on the track to being accepted to one of the most elite New York City ballet schools. And it follows their path into the pitfalls of that. So many kids, I feel like so many kids, they set that bar so high, and I feel like that's a very Darien thing to do. Having grown up in Darien, I can say that. And so that's a great one, and it deals with eating disorders and such. And then I also love, oh my gosh, there's so many new ones. I wrote them down because I wanted to share them at the end. There's a great, these are all mental health themes. The Lucky Ones by Liz Lawson. A Breath Too Late by Rocky Callan. This is a really interesting one. I mean, you need to be aware that this is what it's about before you jump into it, but it's kind of from someone having a lot of regret. A Breath Too Late. You can probably read into what that means. The Edge of Anything is another story that brushes with, devastating depression. That's by Nora Carpenter. Darius the Great Deserves Better. You know that one. That just won all the awards. And The Surprising Power of a Good Dumpling. Do you know that one? Yeah, great. So those are my ones that I recommend that talk about mental health issues.
All right. We had one last breaking question that I really like, so we're going to ask it. I said that was the last one, but I lied. Was it difficult for you emotionally to publish something that was so personal to you?
Yes. It was more difficult to write it than to publish it. The writing, like there's a scene where I actually there's an actual funeral scene. And of course I never went to the funeral because I didn't find out until 6 months after she was gone. So that was like, I can still, when I even read it out loud, I can get choked up reading about it because that's really the closest thing to a funeral service I got. And the last page, I can still cry, which is kind of sad since I wrote it myself, but it is what it is. But by the time I felt like I'd done my friend an honors, I in my heart, I did. And so I almost feel like she was kind of like on my shoulder kind of. And so I feel really proud that it's published, and I feel like she would be really happy to know that it was getting this kind of attention where kids are talking about mental health, where that was something she obviously was not comfortable doing.
Thank you, everyone on this panel. Thank you, Cameron, so much for sharing everything behind the scenes. That was amazing. Thank you to the Depot and to Silver Hill, and for the Friends of Darien Library, without whom none of our programming or events would be possible. So thank you very much to them. We hope you enjoyed the event, and we will see you at the library soon. Have a great evening, and thank you all again.
Thank you, Mia. You were amazing. Thank you, girls. You were awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
So much fun. All righty. I think I'm just going to press end. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Thanks, Emma Kate.
Thank you.
Thank you.